Good morning. Happy Wednesday. We are in Hebrews chapter 13. Took a little bit of a pause yesterday to go to 30,000 feet, and I suggested that in this letter to this sermon, the book of Hebrews, we see what we see in a lot of the letters in the New Testament, and that is one, a call to right thinking, a call to develop a worldview, to develop Christian thinking about things. Secondly, a call to action. To not just know, but to actually do. The faith you have is the faith that you show. We need to apply this. And then third was some motivation and promises of reward, threats of punishment. We see that in this letter as well. So today we continue in Hebrews 13. We're getting towards the end, and it's very end of the book. We're at the beginning of Hebrews 13, but it becomes very specific and practical. It can feel a little bit like the writer is meddling, getting right into the details. So we looked at the first three verses. We're now just at verse 4 today and tomorrow. Marriage is to be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept undefiled, because God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterers. Sexually immoral is the word porne, from which we get pornography. So sort of general sexual sin. So over the years, as a pastor, certainly when I was a college pastor, but also as a senior pastor at Christ Church, I've said a fair bit about sex, arguably not enough. But when I come at this topic, I generally always want to start by saying that there's a grand positive here. The reputation of the church is that it can be very anti-sex, that God is anti-sex. He's embarrassed by it. He's ashamed by it, whatever. Sex should happen in the dark so that, nobody, not even God, can watch. That kind of, it's just absolutely wrong, and it's the wrong place to start. So when we did this series on the Ten Commandments, I argued for this grand positive, that behind every negative command there's a reason, and it's a good thing. So we should not worship false gods, and that's because to worship the God who is worthy of everything completes us, and it makes us it leads to a fuller life. We should not empty the name of the Lord, take the name of the Lord our God in vain, empty his name of value, because it has value. We should not kill, because life has value, right? There's a grand positive behind each of these negatives. So when it comes to the seventh commandment, don't commit adultery, that's not because God is against sex. Adultery, again, sex outside of marriage, sex with somebody other than the person that you were married to. When it comes to sex outside of marriage, when it comes to adultery, it's not being prohibited because God is against sex. It's because he's very, very for it. But he understands that it is fragile, and it is best in the context of one man, one woman, committed together for a lifetime in a safe relationship. We're never more vulnerable than we are when we're lying naked next to somebody, and not just physically naked, but sort of emotionally naked, and that's a moment of being known and hopefully safely and accepted and embraced. And so that's what God designed sex to be for. And again, we act as though we're so enlightened and so much more understanding about sex today than 50 years ago. And the statistics would suggest that people have sex less often today than 50 years ago, and that's because it's because sex is, it's a bit fragile. And I see this as a pastor when couples sometimes in their 40s say, well, we're not really sleeping together anymore. That's too complicated. Well, no, not really. It just reflects challenges there. But God designed sex to be a unifying, bonding thing, a deep form of communication and expression of love. And so he puts up safeguards around it. Now, I'll just mention briefly that one of the interesting things, sort of shocking to see, is that there's a lot of overtones here about sex in terms of the level of deep communication and intimacy that mirrors to our relationship with God. So at this moment, it's shocking for people to hear that the church is considered the bride of Christ, and that in eternity, marriage is really between Jesus and the church, because we think that's just crazy. Well, what will be crazy is in eternity thinking that, that the marriage, which is about Jesus and his church, was being mirrored in any way by a man and a woman. Even the word for intimacy, the word for sexual intercourse in Hebrew, yada, is a word that is used about knowing God. So it says Adam knew Eve and she conceived. And that's the same word that is used to talk about how we can know God. So you got the Song of Solomon and other things. There's a lot here. The big point is, this is God's prohibition against being casual about sex is not because God is against sex. God just says sex is never designed to be casual. And so there are safeguards that he puts around it. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. Have a good day.